to arise. For so long we have been hypnotized. Release yourself from status quo, that's the key. Let's be the change that we want to see.
Hello, Ruud. Welcome to the Experience Design Summit and Spaceship Earth.
Barbara, what a treat. What a treat. Have you been ecstatically dancing over the break?
Of course. Ecstatically dancing, shaking, everything. This is what we are here for, yeah. So great to connect and fly to Switzerland to have you with us today. So for this session, what we planned is, among friends, a conversation essentially. So let's talk a bit about, the fantastic things that you have been doing. And one of those is your upcoming books that is fresh off the printer. So tell us a bit about like what you mentioned here in the video, design to change. What does this mean? What does this mean in the context of the pandemic? How do you see this whole, progression that we went through? What does it mean for experiences, for transformation?
Well, first of all, Barbara, I'd like to thank our friend Christoph, right, for creating a smile in the mind. And for you, the both of you have taken this initiative of being the event owner. No small feat and quite a daunting task. Being an event owner sounds like a really good idea when you come up with the event. But then you have to go and design it and create it and deliver it. And you've experienced that last year. Now you're on Spaceship Earth. You have transformed how you do that. Really enjoyed, your approach of learning about unlearning and how we unlearn all the things that we've learned. I know the elixir of mountain climbing is something that Virus, both of you have, and that kind of brought you together in a common care. But also the design of time. And I think spending time with you guys and having the conversation is really what this is all about. And it's also what that intro clip was about, because the alpha of the book that Rolf Frisse, Dennis Leijer, and I, together with Paul Wilkins, but also a whole slew of EDC masterminds, I've actually used an event to create this book. This is the alpha version of the book, and it starts on page 1 with this very thing. I'll show that here. So still the first version. A good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. Would you leave it to chance? And that was also the reason why I didn't want to give a presentation. I've fallen out of love with anything that has Keynote, PowerPoint, or the like connected to it, because I think conversations are the things that we most crave and are the things that create change. Wars usually starts with violence, but it ends in a conversation, right? So how can we take that learning and what can we do? How can we have better conversations based on the conversations we had before with event owners? And our mission over the past years has become to create the sheet music for events, right? How can we create something that elevates your ability to look and act beyond the now? So we started off a couple of years ago by creating an event canvas, which is the thing that's behind me there. It's 14 building blocks to articulate how change happens. And change happens really at a couple of levels. That change really is from, behavior change is the thing that creates value. And you are creating behavior change. You've made us draw. See, I actually drew out some of the things that Veronica was talking about.
Very nice.
Did you know, Barbara, we spend No, let me ask you. Do you know how many hours we've spent since the lockdown of your last event? Any idea?
Tell me. How many?
160, 10,680 hours since your last event. Now, some people say that you need at least 10,000 hours of practice in something to become good at it. And I think we've all had a lot of digital dexterity practice. You're making us practice today again with this event. And that's all about the behavior change that we're creating, right? This behavior change up here, from entry to exit, just out of this event, gives us a whole different set of experiences. Then we have a number of design restrictions. This year, we could not get together in a schloss, but we have to use our digital screens that we use together. And then after that, you prototyped, right? You took these elements and started building out these things of how could we do this event? You could do it live, but now you're doing it in an online version. But one of the things that we do notice as we're going through this is that we have some human austerity, right? We crave that meal that Christoph was, describing 10 years ago, that are the sparks of creating friendships, that create real transformational change between people. And I think we've all built our digital dexterity and had over 10,000 hours of experience for those that hadn't started before the unfortunate epidemic or pandemic that we're currently in. But the conversations we've been having have been pretty phenomenal. And also what we found very interesting is that let's not have this time go to waste. And that's why early on in March, we said, let's take all the conversations that we've had, right? Now that we've built a language around event design and how to use these different building blocks, let's create let's use that language in the conversations. Because unfortunately, many of the events that we have show this kind of syndrome, right? Or many of the experiences we have, right? What went wrong? Stop the flow. Here's another hole. Let's fix it with duct tape, right? Who's to blame? This is the kind of thing that was going on as we were going through this event. And if you look over the fence and you kind of look the other way, like what can you actually do to design time differently, like Joe said, and then go back to the fuzzy beginning of this event and figure out, is there a way we can design ourselves out of this current situation? And there is. Fortunately, there is. And I think with the knowledge that you have, but also assembled in this space, the conversation needs to open up to so many more people. Right now, it's just the two of us while we're talking. But how do we get all the others to chime?
Yeah. And Ruud, like based on what you just mentioned, also with the fantastic tools and methods that you created with the canvas, how do you see, what is your take on the difference between the physical and the virtual? Is it a versus? Is it a combination? What future will we be stepping into? Because this is probably the million-dollar question that a lot of our participants have today. Where are we moving? Because we have now, as you mentioned, the summit was always intended to be immersive physical experience. Now we said, okay, let's make a prototype. Let's make it happen virtually anyways. Let's just do something different. So where do you see we're going next?
Well, I think events are to humans what the internet is to computers. So let's unwrap that a little bit, because nobody said that you cannot do events online. We've been doing them for a long time, right? The three things that changed most during my lifetime have been probably the internet first. That came into my life. Then mobile phone technology, which allowed you to connect from any place and anywhere. And then the third one is probably this pandemic we're just going through. And we're in the midst of this enormous transformation. We can now play with place and time. And we can now invite way more people to this specific conversation. With video, we can reach many to many, one to many, many to one. But unfortunately, with audio, you cannot. At least not in digital ways. And I think this is what's so interesting. The ecstatic dancers that were just in this break demonstrated that, they were in a very informal setting doing things, and later they will probably come back. But music is probably one of the reminders that we have about the kind of learning we can get for events, right? Back in the middle 80s, 85, 86, Herbie Hancock has a very famous little clip on Sesame Street where he explains to kids how you can take a music sample and turn that into music. Well, we're all playing with the same amount of notes and we can compose on sheet music, but look at the diversity of music that there is. And we're not complaining about analog or digital music. We're now mixing all of these things. And that's what hybrid means. It's just mixing two things. Maybe we can challenge the audience also to contribute to this, right? Because although we're in a digital medium, I think there's a way that we could design a way to celebrate our special day of birth, right? This is year zero, but we all have a year zero. And see if we could bottle that up into a time machine that could then be not just time well saved, right? And certainly not wasted time. I think it would be time really well invested into that little moment that will create a smile in the mind somewhere in the future to enable us all to be able to look and act beyond the now.
Yes. And I know, Ruud, one of your passions that we know is, of course, music, and to be very specific, a very traditional Swiss music. So we have prepared a little surprise, I think, for the audience. As you said, everyone has a year zero, everyone has this birth date, this birthday. And tell us what you have prepared. But
Barbara, before we do that, I'd like to ask everybody, let's see if in the chat we can get that out, right? So if during the pandemic, were you brave enough to suck at something new, right? Have you tried something that you have never done before? And it might be drawing, like Veronica showed us, right? Or is it anything else? Is there something you've tried that you haven't tried before? And if we get some of those answers in, it'll be very interesting to look at that. But one of the things I've tried, and I started slightly before the pandemic, was that I went to the iPhone version before it ever existed. So indeed, like you said, I used to make music on a trumpet, and I used to play in jazz bands, and I used to be quite active in that for a long time. And when I moved to Switzerland 11 years ago, I stopped making music. And that kind of made me miserable. So at some point, instead of complaining about not making music and not finding the right group of people that like the kind of music that I like and that can, bear my travel schedule. And knowing my passion for very authentic music, I went to the Alphorn, which is the oldest iPhone that you can find without batteries, only 60 notes to choose from. But if you play it in the right way, it can reach multiple kilometers, right? So you can call from the mountaintop for the fact that you ran out of beer and still get people to understand that language in music. So the last challenge I think that you were proposing, Barbara, was that what if we could together, I'm sure that in the audience, we have somebody that has their year zero right now. Mm-hmm. Don't you think? The odds are pretty big. And if not an audience member, probably somewhere in their house. Definitely. Or in their family, someone has a birthday, right? So I would challenge everyone to see if you can warm up your vocal cords and sing along with this rendition of an original version of a song that you probably most of you already know.
Let's see what we have prepared, Ruud. I look forward to hearing you in action with the song. So thank you so much, and let's see the audio performance from Switzerland. Thank you, Ruud, for this lovely performance, and thank you for sharing the authentic Swiss culture with us, and something that is very dear to you. Thank you for the conversation. It was great having you today, having this really lovely chat, and all the insights that you share with us.
Until we can meet again in a dungeon bar or some castle in the planet, let's do the digital dexterity and human austerity and see if we can mix the two. Thank you, Barbara, for the opportunity.
I look forward to seeing you very soon, Ruud. All the best, and see you soon.